News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users, now available on iTunes, and as well syndicated by CRN Digital Talk Radio. That's www.crntalk.com to cable networks, serving an additional 12 million households. I'm your host, Gary Baumgarten. Well, today is Veterans Day in the United States of America, and I know every country, one way or another, finds a way to celebrate and honor what their veterans have done for their respective countries. And it's going to be very interesting today to get the perspectives of our two authors. In the second half of the program today, I'll be joined by Jeffrey Ward. He's screenwriter of PBS's blockbuster The War, and author of the New York Times bestseller, The War and Intimate History, 1941 to 1945, where he captures the memories of people from a number of towns that he pre-selected who fought in World War II. And I think it's really important, while we debate the trouble spots around the world, that we stop to honor those who, this is the back cover for those of you who are watching, honor those who fought in World War II, because they rid this world of fascism. And they're all dying out because, they're in their 80s and 90s, and they're not going to be with us very much longer. And it's important to hear the stories that they have to say about a war that arguably was a just war, World War II. Today we argue whether the various wars that we and other countries get involved in are just or not, and that's something that our first guest can speak to. Kevin Seitz is a war correspondent. He worked for CNN, NBC, and ABC before going over to Yahoo, where in 1 year, a little thing that they called over there in the hot zone, he covered 20 wars in 365 days, 20 wars in 21 countries, the 21st country having been Iran, which we're not seeing involved in war today, but clearly they were in the past, and with the saber rattling that we're hearing right now, maybe imminently thrust into a war situation again, so it was perhaps appropriate that he went there. He perfected, and he actually started this before doing this project for Yahoo when he was working for CNN and NBC, the idea of the one-man band, as we like to call it, where he would go out with a camera and videotape his interviews, and then he had a computer that had an editing bay on it, and he would edit his interviews, and then he would use the satellite uplink to upload it to an FTP server and send it to whoever he was working for at the time. And he's perhaps best known, and we want to talk about this, but I don't want to just focus on this incident, while working for NBC as an embedded reporter with a camera, he went into a mosque where there were wounded Iraqis, and videotaped as a Marine shot a wounded, unarmed, and non-threatening individual, shot him to death. It was a huge scandal that the video was pulled out and played by news agencies around the world. The Western news agencies sanitized it, but the Arab news organizations such as Al Jazeera played it in its entirety on an hourly basis, and it affected people's perceptions of what the Marines and the rest of the coalition troops were doing over there in Iraq. Kevin Seitz, thank you for joining us. Welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thank you, Gary. Good to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us. And as I suggested in that opening, I want to get that out of the way first, because that's what people focus on when they hear the name Kevin Seitz. You are fortunately or unfortunately remembered for that piece of video that you shot. And there are those who have honored you for your courage in shooting it and releasing the video, doing your job as a reporter, trying to bring the truth to the world. And there are those who have vilified you for doing it because of the reaction to it and its effect on perceptions of the coalition troops. And the question, of course, is raised, well, was that judgment call a good one because it perhaps put troops in greater danger, because it might have caused someone who otherwise wouldn't have resisted to become involved in the News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users, and now syndicated by CRN Digital Talk Radio, www.crntalk.com, to cable networks serving an additional 12 million households. I'm your host, Gary Baumgarten. And by the way, for those of you who are joining us from our affiliate base, and we welcome those affiliates joining us here at the bottom of the hour, if you want to join in on the conversation, just go to www.paltalk, that's PALTALK.com/newstalk, and click on the Join the Room button, and you'll be transported into our virtual auditorium. There's no charge, and you'll be talking, as I will be talking in just a couple of seconds, with Jeffrey Ward. Jeffrey Ward, you may not recognize the name, but you sure will know his work. He is the screenwriter of PBS's blockbuster The War and the author of the New York Times bestseller, which I will hold up to the camera once again, The War, An Intimate History, 1941 through 1945. You know, this is Veterans Day here in the United States of America, and as I said at the top of the show, we need to honor, in my opinion, even as we debate the current conflicts around the world, the work of all of those who stood up to fascism in World War II. And this book chronicles exactly what they did. It's called An Intimate Portrait because it's really told from the perspective of those who served. And this is a generation, someone other than myself called it the greatest generation for what they did in standing up to fascism, that is dying. This is a resource that we are losing. And we thank Jeffrey Ward and his co-author Ken Burns. If I can keep this earphone in here so when Boaz talks to me I can hear him, for bringing this to us both in television form and in book form. Jeffrey Ward, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thanks very much.
Tell me what motivates you to do this project.
Well, hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. Ken and I have been working together for about 24 years. Excuse me. And we got interested, I think, for two reasons. One was that the number of veterans who are dying every day is more than 1,000. And we wanted to get their record on screen and in the pages of a book as soon as we could before they disappeared. The other thing was that there was a high school survey which seemed to show that most kids who got out of high school knew so little about World War II that they thought that the Germans and the Americans had been on the same side fighting the Russians.
What a revelation!
Yeah, that shows you how bad history teaching
They
is.
thought that the Germans and the Russians were on the same side of World War II?
Yep.
And what kind of history were they taught in school?
Well, the history in school is not what it once was, and in any case, there are lots of good, dedicated teachers who don't do that. But those two things combined, plus the fact that it's a great story, and we wanted to get these